Hey everybody, Eric from Hit Subscribe here, and today I'm going to be answering yet another question that comes a lot from clients and prospects, in this case, more often prospects. And that question is, should I have guest bloggers on my blog, or should all of our writers be internal staff members? So if you would like to hear my take on that, stay tuned. All right, so full disclosure, I am the owner and co-founder, partner in a content agency. That's what Hit Subscribe is. So we absolutely have a natural bias and predisposition to telling you that you should have guest bloggers on your blog. I just want to throw that out there. We earn our money by brokering guest blogging. That being said, I will come out and say that having guest bloggers is absolutely not for everyone. So let me start with a couple of main scenarios where I actually don't think it would be a good idea for you to have guest bloggers on your blog. And just for the sake of clarity here, I'm mainly speaking about our sphere of influence, which is the tech world. So it's like software products, products in the DevOps and ops space, that type of thing. It is harder for me to speak to things in like radically different verticals or different industries. That being said, I think a lot of this will hold true across the board. So caveat emptor outside of the tech industry. So there's two main situations I see where I don't think it's a good idea to outsource the blogging. Number one is if you are going for a certain type of marketing and your agency, and you have an agency where you're selling your people's labor. So this is going to be a lot of custom application development shops. And I'll say here that it's not so much that it's a bad thing to have guest blogs. In fact, I would actually recommend sprinkling a few of them in there, but I'm talking about more guest blogging as a matter of course, that you are paying people from outside of the company to write blog posts as the primary driver of your blog. And the reason I think that you might not want to do that if you're a certain type of agency is because you are marketing your service. And in this case, your service is your people. So that is definitely a situation where you might want to give some thought to, hey, let's actually have our internal folks, our internal engineers or whatever you're doing, let's have them writing authoritative posts. That being said, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with bringing in outside guest bloggers. It just depends on what you're doing in sales conversations, and you might want to be prepared to field questions if anybody actually notices as to why it isn't your internal folks that are writing these posts. If you are selling software engineering, why do you have external software engineers writing about software engineering? So that's one scenario. The other main scenario where I would say you probably don't want guest writers is situations, and we run across this, where the business and the prestige of the business and the brand of the business is heavily tied in with the founder or founders. And typically when this happens, the founder or founders will tend to view the blog and the company's website and the company's kind of whole presence as being inseparable from them and their presence. And when that happens, even if there is a push to outsource the blog, companies where that's true are just typically not ready to outsource blogging and to have predominantly guest bloggers write for them. And we have seen that shape up a number of times. And it's usually just that there's this kind of set of nerves and there's a lot of back and forth about the content and how things are said and how is this going to reflect on, me or us as partners. And when that's the case, you're in this kind of scenario where if you're faced with like two options. Number one, if being the face of the business and having your brands kind of interchangeable, yours and the businesses, if that is working for you, then you probably shouldn't outsource much of anything. You should probably carve out some of your own time to write, to your fans or what have you. The other option is if that's historically been the case, but it's not really doing anything great for you, then you might want to rethink how inextricable that relationship between your brand and the company brand is, if you're the one here. If you're working for a person and that's the case, it's going to be hard to outsource. There's just nothing more that we can say about that. So that is kind of my take on when you might not want to have guest bloggers extensively writing for your blog. I do think there's always room to have guest bloggers on your blog. It's a great way to have content, to get some SEO. Often it just takes a backlink, gets outside perspectives in, potentially exposes you to a broader audience. So having the occasional guest post, I think, is a great idea for anybody. But when I'm talking about who might want to avoid it, it's people who are in one of these two camps. So in general, should you have guest blog posts, I would say across the board, have them occasionally. Should you have guest blog posts predominantly? Like, for instance, Hit Subscribe, we bring our authors and we give byline credit on our client sites. And so you have these sites where the blog is predominantly software engineers or DevOps engineers or whomever from the community that are contributing to this site where they don't work, and they are getting byline credit. So the question is, maybe should you do that? Should you have a blog that consists mostly or entirely of guest bloggers? In the software space, my answer to this is yes. And my answer to this is yes for a few different reasons. One, you are kind of most trivially bringing in, the writers are associating themselves with your brand. So you're exposing yourselves to people who might also be customers. Number two, it is also going to be exposing you to these folks' audience. They're going to be tweeting about it and doing general promotion kind of in and of themselves. Hey, I wrote this article on such and such site. Everybody go check it out. So now everybody that likes and respects that person who is getting a byline credit on your site, they're going to go check out your site, have a good association because this person thinks well enough of you to be writing on that site. So you're gaining traction with a wider audience. It's also generally a good look. You're participating in the broader community. And there's social cred that goes beyond just the author's audience, which is, hey, there are engineers out there that think highly enough of this organization and this offering that they want to be publicly associated with it. So that's a good thing. Other advantages that I can think of include, and this is a little bit of realpolitik here, but you can maybe get a little bit more controversial in some ways with your content marketing where you aren't directly saying something, if, for instance, like to put an emphasis on this, if you write a product that's, a unit testing product, you might write some kind of controversial post along the lines of like, hey, in 2019, all software developers should be unit testing or you're not doing it right. It's a bit of a controversial stance. If you take that stance, you might be worried about a bit of blowback. You have a layer of insulation if it's a guest blogger on your site taking that stance. I mean, still it's on your site, but you can kind of say, look, we have guest bloggers on, we invite a variety of perspectives. So it gives you some freedom, to express certain points of view as well through those authors. So that can be actually pretty powerful from a content marketing perspective. And in general, I think just generally being out there in the community provides a lot of helpful avenues that you might not even really think of off the cuff. We have formed or helped form a lot of great relationships between our authors and fans of our authors and these brands. And there's just stuff that can kind of bubble out of those associations, additional opportunities, maybe even job offers. It's just a good way to be involved in the broader sense with the community. And one last point that I just kind of want to make to close with a little bit here is whether you opt to have guest authors on your site, either a little bit or all the time or predominantly, and even if you're an agency trying to, sell your folks labor or what have you, I think a lot of organizations dramatically overestimate the amount of research that anybody will do about your authors and how much they'll care. So the average reader on your site is probably not ever, and not just the average, there's probably never a reader on your site that is going to read something by Jane Smith and then go look up whether Jane Smith works for your company or not. And then subsequently, when they see that she doesn't, think to themselves, I was going to buy from that company, but they had Jane Smith and she doesn't even work there. And why is that? It's just not a jump that people make. Your readers don't care. So from a content marketing perspective, you just want to be bringing people into your site. You just want to get eyeballs. You want to engender goodwill in the community, and you want to be just bringing in traffic and getting yourself out there. And whether you do that through engineers working for you or through marketing people working for you or through external guest bloggers, it's kind of all good. So that's my answer to the question. Almost always, yes, you should have guest bloggers at least a little bit of the time, if not all of the time, with a few very rare exceptions. But yes, have guest bloggers on your site. If you like this video, feel free to give us a like and a subscribe down below. That would very much help the channel and help us, and we'd love to have you. If you didn't like, you can let us know that too. But thank you as always for watching, and we will catch you next time.